My birth name was Joseph Ignatius Schallberger, the oldest of three of us. Yeah, my brother John is a year and a half. He's a Christmas baby. He was born on Christmas. And then Norbert, since he's 6 years younger than me, he was the youngest at that time. My folks were older when they got married too, so that also tells something about their life too. They were single for many, many years. And my dad was from Switzerland, from a little town of Lungern, but at that time there was no work. My dad had spent his military time and he was being trained as a shoemaker. So when he came here, he thought he could take up that trade too. And while he was here, he heard that Mount Angel Abbey needed a shoemaker. So he went over there. Well, they wanted a shoe repairman. They didn't make shoes. They wanted a repair person in a shoe shop, you know. So anyway, then he ended up in the print shop too for the rest of his life. But my mother was born in this country, in Washington. Her folks came from Austria, Germany during that era. They tried to come over here. And we lived near a monastery, Mount Angel Abbey. The convent in town was Queen of Angels Convent, the same sisters as these from different convents, monasteries in Switzerland, but they were Benedictine sisters. And so I lived with a Benedictine community. My dad worked all his life at the monastery in Mount Angel as a printer. He worked in there. They had a print shop. They published a magazine, St. Joseph magazine, for many years. They published the St. Joseph Blatt, which was a German paper. In those days, I was really uncommitted. I didn't know anything about dioceses or monasteries too much, except I lived near one. And the priests at Mount Angel, Oregon were Benedictines from the monastery, and they were wonderful. You know, we really had we'd have 3 of them in Mount Angel. Now I have a hard time finding one. But Abbot Damien was our pastor for many years before he became abbot. But we had really good priests in town. And they were the ones that taught us in the boys' high school. One day, we were outside somewhere, and Father Brendan pointed up. The school was just a short distance from the seminary, and Father Brendan pointed up to the seminary, and he said, "Joe, I think you ought to go up there." That was it. Brendan was an outcast. He was always getting in trouble as a monk. You know, he just was a little free spirit. But anyway, I think that's what it was. "Joe, you know, I think you belong up there." You know, the rest of the monks would have said, "He says something like that." But that was just his nature. You know, we enjoyed him. A few days before I was supposed to go to school, my little brother died. And so the day of the funeral at Mount Angel, Oregon, in the morning, that afternoon, a seminarian came by, picked me up. I left home. It's quite a drama. You know, I didn't think about it in those days, but my mother lost Norbert. Well, she lost me. I wasn't very far away from home. It was only about a mile or two. So later on, I thought that was quite a drama for my mother. You know, just all of a sudden, my other brother was still at home going to school. Until after the second year of college, was a decision point too, because 3 of my classmates were interested in joining the monastery, and they were going to leave their diocese. I was undecided, but they decided to go to the next year, become a novice, become part of the monastery instead of the diocesan priesthood. So anyway, I jumped in with them, and the 4 of us, we were good companions. We joined the monastery, and then they accepted all of us. After our novitiate, 1 year of trial, then we're allowed to take a new name. And so when that time came, I thought I'd take Norbert because that was my little brother's name. Well, my classmate took that name. He had higher seniority than I did. So then I thought, I need a Swiss saint. So I thought I would take Nicholas de Flue, Nicholas, not St. Nicholas the Santa Claus, but Nicholas from Flue in Switzerland. Well, anyway, the year before me, somebody took the name Nicholas. So the other famous saint in Switzerland is Meinrad. And there's a large monastery built on his, he was a hermit too, on his hermitage, which evolved then. He was killed because they thought he had money. So he wasn't really a martyr for his faith. He lived in a hermitage and quite a distance away from population. But people knew where he was and went for counseling. And these two robbers came along and thought he would have a lot of money stored around there, which he didn't need. But he had two pet ravens. And so when these two robbers were so upset that he had nothing to offer, they killed him. They stoned him, whatever. And so they left, but these ravens followed them to the next village. And when the people saw the ravens flying around these robbers, they knew something was wrong. So anyway, there's a large monastery in Indiana, St. Meinrad's Archabbey. And their logo, too, is you'll always see a raven flying or sitting there, too. So anyway, that's the raven part of... So I've always had a kind of an interest. Ravens are smart birds. I've had interest in the ravens. I made my first profession in 1958. That's when I took the name Meinrad, I was 58. And so then I stayed there. We were ordained in 1964, and then I went off. They wanted to make a teacher out of me too. I took some summer courses at Portland State, and I also went to the University of Oregon, to Seattle U. And then all of a sudden this big emptiness came at the Benedictine press, And so I think the abbot said, well, since your dad worked there, your uncle worked there, you have printer's ink in your veins, so that might be something good to take up. So, I mean, who would have thought? But that's the way we work in monasteries. You just jump in and do what you can. So I ran one of the presses, I ran the folder, I ran the cutter, I had to make out all the bills. It was a commercial shop, but at that time, the state tax laws, we were not incorporated as a printing plant. We were incorporated as an education, as a school. And so that changed everything. We couldn't do commercial work anymore. So when I was there, then we ended commercial work. We had one beautiful one called the Rhododendron magazine. It was 64 pages. It was a nice one, and we did college catalogs and papers. But anyway, it simplified everything when we got rid of the commercial. And then we were what we call an in-plant printery. There are a lot of in-plant print shops. Hospitals have them. Insurance agencies have their own print shop, So I was manager of the Benedictine Press for about 12 years. I thought I'd be there the rest of my life. Mount Angel had founded a new monastery, one in Mexico, Cuernavaca, and one in southern Idaho. And so the abbot said, well, they need a few new members over there. I came to a high desert of Jerome, Twin Falls area, and we had just, a year or two, we had just moved into that structure. It's farmland. It was applied for because of desert entry laws at that time. If you could prove up on all this farmland, and prove you'd use it for farming, then eventually you could get it, So that's another long story, but I was here 8 years, and then they called me back home for 4 years to take care of some things that needed to be done on the buildings. And then the sisters had a hard time finding chaplains, so they please, please come back and help us. So now I'm here 9 or 10 years again. So God has just been pushing me here and there all my life. You know, I just kind of feel my way along and okay. Go to the print shop, come to Idaho, come to St. Gertrude's, you know, just, I don't talk about myself very often. I'm an introvert, you know, a real introvert. I've learned to be extroverted, you know, to be outgoing, but I'm a little hermit here, you know. But years ago at my monastery in Jerome, there were some people came to us, some of our friends, widows, divorced women, came to us and said, you know, they were starting to form a support group of divorced and widowed. So they said, can we come up here, you know, once a month and use one of your rooms and have a support group meeting and get together? And so anyway, I sat in with them, and so I became part of that group too. I remember one of the ladies was a little hesitant about letting a priest join this group, you know, so I had to write a talk. And, oh, this is great, you know, I have to teach. I got that thing in my mind. So I wrote a talk, and we reviewed them. We had people from Idaho Falls, we had people from Boise coming and meeting in Jerome at my monastery, preparing for a weekend. It takes a lot of hard work. And so we critiqued the talks. You just don't give a talk. So they critiqued my talk. They wouldn't accept it. It was horrible. You know, I was teaching. I was selling what I read in a book somewhere. Okay, so I had to rewrite it. The second time, they refused it again. Why? Because there was nothing of me in it. And so I think that's where I started telling about my brother Norbert and just my life, you know, because we have to make our lives part of those talks too. And so anyway, I learned, I haven't cried for a long time. Oh, sorry. But it really, meeting, and I know those people helped my priesthood too. They were such good people. We supported each other. I learned, I'm just so thankful for being part of that group. That was a real blessing. I think it pulled me out of myself and being with real people again, or whatever. You know, I just always look back, and I don't know why it does that. It still makes me cry because it was so beautiful. It was really nice. And I'm always grateful, and I still keep in contact with some of them, you know, just wonderful people. And to me, that was a real highlight, and just getting, I guess we were trained, you know, don't talk about yourself, be available for everybody else. And I think that put me a little bit in touch with myself too. And it's not selfish, it's just healthy, you know. But we sort of had to leave that part of our lives out, you know. We're there for others, and so, and they were there for me, I was there for them anyway. So that was a good experience. Sniff, sniff, I haven't cried for a long time. Whenever I experience love in people or seeing nice things going on, it would just start flowing. But I haven't cried for a long time. There were times I'd get so frustrated and didn't really know how to handle situations, and it'd be better to end it all, you know. That whole area of completing suicide, and that, yeah, that's another area that needs support and help too. So somehow, I don't know. I think God had some more work for me. Why he doesn't have more work for others, I don't know. But somehow I was able to go through those times and even talk about it, you know. And I'm surprised how many people, you know, reach their low and then come back out of it again. So anyway, and I think that's a good experience for me because I can empathize a little better with others too, where they are. and not tell them my story, but listen to their story too. Listening, I guess, is the big thing that we all need to do, listen to one another. I think church people are telling too much, are telling people all the time what to do. And Jesus didn't tell. He walked with us. He listened. He heard people's pain. He came among us, walked with the sinners, tax collectors, prostitutes, with the people who were rejected, because he came to save. I know they hate to talk about love, 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 but just to be present with people, I guess that's a good way of loving, is just being present with one another. Because there's so much anger in our society, and shouting and noise. I keep stressing that the one word Pope Francis uses is be gentle. You don't hear popes talk about like that. Be gentle with one another. Don't go condemning one another. And I think that's our whole society is. Help us be more gentle, Lord. Help us be like Christ. That's all. It's so simple, but it's so hard. Careers and money, and yet we walk over one another too at that time. We hurt people. It's always a fear I have, is I just hope I don't chase people away, from God or the church. But and maybe I do, but not intentionally. I just, Lord, Meinrad, be careful. This is, we don't know where people are coming from. Love God, love neighbor, but as you love yourself. And that's not selfish. If we don't love ourselves, we're pretty harsh on others too. I get mad at myself a lot too. But we have to learn it's not selfish. Love your neighbor as yourself. And if you don't love yourself, you're not going to love your neighbor that much. So that trinity, love God, love neighbor, love self, is so basic. And so a lot of people are loving telling everybody else what to do, and so rigid, but I don't know what they're afraid of. You analyze it, and they're really not loving themselves. They're out telling others how to live and be. They're very critical. And so we have to keep that love of self important too. I struggled too at times. There were times I wanted to leave the monastery. I was really disgusted and fell in love. And that's been a special, well, they can hear it. I think that's a blessing, falling in love in middle age, But and we still love each other. We're not getting married, but that was another one, just to have somebody. Well, I have a lot of people love me. They do. But this one was more special than others too, and I know their family, and we've been good friends for years and years. But that was, that was special. I'm not ashamed of my life. It's brought me where I am today. So yeah, ups and downs. Downs, ups, good people. No, I should be grateful for my almost 85 years of life. So that's a blessing. Father Meinrad, a.k.a. Joseph Schallberger. Yeah. Well, this was fun.
Oh, good. I see it wasn't too bad, right?
I always have fear of new things, trepidation.